Class, if you're doing these notes by video with a sub, it's meaning that I have not been able to be here at class. Sorry about that. So these are your notes for Venn diagrams. The essential question in these notes is, what is a Venn diagram and how can I use it to help calculate probabilities? On Thursday and Friday we worked on tree diagrams, and now we're going to be working on another type of diagram that helps us figure probabilities, and it is a Venn diagram. I will tell you right now, I think a Venn diagram is a little more complicated to work with than a tree, but if you follow the steps that I teach you on how to build one and how to use one, it should hopefully make clear sense to you. So there's our essential question. All right, let's go ahead and start the notes. First thing is, let's go over a couple definitions to make sure we remember these. What is compound probability? It is the probability that two or more events will occur. You'll be seeing compound probability in the Venn diagrams. If I go too fast on these, class, no worries, just pause the video and then you can continue once you write the definition. What is an independent event? We learned this. An independent event means the outcome of one event does not influence the outcome of a second event. What is a dependent event? The outcome of one event does influence the outcome of a second event. Remember independent events? Rolling a die, flipping a coin, spinning a spinner. Dependent events, picking a ticket out of a raffle, picking our shapes out of a bag but not returning them. We've got a number of different things we've talked about as far as events that are dependent. Removing a card from a deck of cards and then drawing a second card. That first card that wasn't returned affects the probability of the second card. Okay, let's define some of these words. We've done this already in our notes. An outcome is a possible result of an experiment. Flipping a coin, our outcomes are heads or tails. Rolling a six-sided die, outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The event is the outcome we want to have happen. So if you say, what's the probability of flipping a coin and having it land on heads? Heads. The landing on heads is our event. And a trial is a single test of an experiment that results in an outcome. Okay, here's another part we've learned already. The complement of some event A is all the possible outcomes of an experiment that are not part of event A. Remember my example in class? If I am 98% sure I will be in class, then there's a 2% chance I will not be there. That is the complement of being there versus not being there. And defining random. A random experiment means that all possible outcomes have the same probability of occurring. I'm going to roll a die. Every side has the same probability of showing on the die. So there are our definitions. Now let's deal with a new one. A Venn diagram. It's a diagram using circles to represent groups with the overlap, you could also say intersection, the overlap of the circles showing the relationships between the groups. You've probably drawn Venn diagrams before, but maybe you have not gone through and figured out probabilities based on Venn diagrams. So we're going to have circles that overlap, and it's going to show us the relationships between the groups. Now, this next section, class, if I were with you, we would go over and do an actual class survey on your Chromebooks and find out what musical preferences you guys like. But since I am not there, we're going to go ahead, whoops, let's bring that back again. We're going to go ahead and just make up some data so that we can show you how a Venn diagram works. So go to the next column. Okay. So in our survey, we would have collected data on, number one, how many total students we have, and all the different musical preferences they have. So in this case, let's make up some data. Let's just pretend that we have 28 students. And I asked the question, how many of them like rock metal only? Of these three types of music, rock metal, hip hop, rap, and classical jazz, how many of them just like rock metal? And let's say 17 of them said that's all we like, those three. 13 students raised their hand and said, you know what, I just like hip hop or rap. Now either one of those is good. If they just like rock and not metal, they still count. If they like hip hop but don't really care for rap, then they still would pick this category. And then how many students like classical and jazz? 17. Now, oh, sorry about this, class. I actually misspoke. This doesn't mean they only like this one. It means they like this one. So I would have just had, how many of you like rock or metal? 17, raise your hand. How many like hip hop or rap? 13. How many like classical and jazz? 16. Now I'd ask the question, how many of you like rock, metal, and hip hop or rap? And say that 8 of you raise your hand. Like both of those. That means, class, by the way, you're in both of these categories. You raised your hand for rock metal and you raised your hand for hip hop. That means you like them both. And then, how many of you like rock metal and classical jazz? There were 8 of you that actually raised your hand that like both. That means you're in these categories. You were one of the 17 that liked rock and metal. You were one of the 16 that liked classical or jazz. And then how many of you like hip hop, rap, and classical jazz? Say 6 of you said, okay, I like both of those. And then we asked, all right, well, how many of you have a pretty open preference of types of music, and you actually like all 3 of those? And 4 of you raised your hand. All right, now, this is a lot of data, and I'll tell you, this is difficult to figure out probabilities if you just show the data as a bunch of numbers. We can make this actually easier if we put this data into a Venn diagram. Now I'm going to teach you right now, class, how to fill out your Venn diagram. If you follow my steps, it's no sweat. If you go off on your own, there are other ways to do this, but I'll tell you, don't get confused. So here are my steps. First thing you're going to do is you see there are 3 circles. We're going to label those 3 circles with our 3 categories. So is this circle number 1? I'm going to write, this is rock/metal. And I'll put an underline there. This circle number 2 over here, this is going to be hip hop or rap. And then the bottom one, we're going to make this bottom circle, is going to be classical or jazz. I know some of you say, what about band music? Well, band music can be anything. So if you play classical or, get rid of that, classical or jazz music, it's band music. All right, so we've got our 3 categories. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go up. The first thing we're going to do after we label our circles is go back and figure out how many students are in each one of those categories individually. We've got 17 who like rock metal, 13 like hip hop rap, 16 like classical and jazz. So over here we're going to write 17 like rock or metal, 16 like, hip hop or rap is 13, and classical jazz is 16. So there is our 3 categories. Alright, next step now, class, is the next step you do is you're going to find the category where they like all 3. So in this case, they like all 3 musical styles. We're going to put that number in our Venn diagram. This intersection right here represents all students who are in the rock metal circle. They're also in the hip hop rap, and they're also in the classical jazz. So that's the next step. Put that like all 3, or the category that includes all 3, put that in the middle. The next step is we're going to label our Venn diagram with the overlap ones, the ones where they like 2 out of the 3. So if they like rock, metal, and hip hop, here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to write it inside the Venn diagram. I want you to write it on the outside. You're going to write it right on the outside between the 2 circles that are overlapping. So rock, metal, and hip hop, that's these 2 circles. You're going to put that number 8 right here. It's really not part of our Venn diagram, but it's going to help us finish our Venn diagram. Take a look at the next overlap. Rock metal and classical jazz. 8 people there. Here's rock metal. Here's classical jazz. Put an 8 right there. And then the last overlap category, hip hop and classical jazz, which is between these two circles. That one is a 6. Okay. Next step is, think about this, class. You know how many like all 3, and you know how many like just 2. That means these 2 categories right here, this space right here and this space right here, those 2 spaces need to add up to 8, because 8 means all of these. So all you got to do is do 8 minus 4, and that number is 4. And the same thing for this one. We got 8 total people who like rock, metal, and classical jazz, and of those, 4 of them actually like hip hop and rap as well. So the leftovers are 4. And on this one, 6 people like classical jazz and hip hop. Of those people, 4 of them also like rock metal. So 6 minus 4 is 2. You just filled out all the overlap sections. The last step now is to now figure out what goes in our main circles. Here's the cool part about this. We know 17 people like rock metal, and of those, we've already accounted for 4, 4, and 4. Those are all in our rock metal circle. So 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. 17 minus 12 is 5. That means only 5 are left. Now look at this, class. The circle rock metal has 17 people in it. And look at what the Venn diagram shows us. 5 of them only like rock metal. 4 of them like rock metal and hip hop. 4 of them like rock metal and classical jazz, and 4 of them like all 3. Hip hop rap's the same way. 13 total. 4, 4, and 2. We've already accounted for 8. 4 plus 4 is 8. 10 are already accounted for. That means there are 3 left. And then the last circle, classical jazz, let's see how many we have. We got 16. We've got 8. 10 of those are already accounted for. That means there are 6 people left over that just like classical jazz. Let's take a look at that. Now notice, class, those numbers don't match anything up here, because this category of rock metal, notice it's not 5, because this category also included all the students who like another type of music besides rock and metal, and that's why they don't match up with the columns. The cool part, though, is that this Venn diagram now gives us all the information we need to find every possible probability. I'm going to stop the video now. We'll start it up on the next one.